Welcome to A Voice of Reason in Turbulent Times with Pastor Charles Burnett Morrow. A powerful, practical, prophetic, and progressive commentary about what is happening in our world today.
Oh my goodness, there we go. Hello, folks. This is Pastor Charles with A Voice of Reason in Turbulent Times, a little podcast project I've been trying to do. Cannot say as I've been staying up with it as regularly as I would like to, but I've been very busy. It's very difficult for me to do all that I do plus the podcast. The podcast takes a great number of hours to organize and put together, and today I had to go outside and do some organizing. I had to do some lawn work today. And so I went ahead and got outside and got my lawn work done. And then I turned around and I said, I really need to get online today and do a podcast. I've needed to do one for quite a while now. There is so much, folks, going on that it's not even funny. There is so much happening right now. And there are several things I want to share with you. And then, let me see. Okay. I actually was having a great deal of trouble signing on today to so I could get some stuff done here. And so I'm kind of having to do things as I speak to you. And hopefully this will work. I hope to heavens that this will work today. I am not really sure, to be honest with you. I was not able to test it ahead of time, but we will see what happens, okay? Matter of fact, I'm trying to make sure that we are live as we're supposed to be. And for some reason, I'm not seeing us live online. So I have no idea if this is in fact broadcasting or not. I have no clue in the universe. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and do what I'm doing. And then if I should discover later that for whatever reason this did not go live as it ought to have, which I've got to tell you, the day I'm having today, that would not surprise me in the least. But if for any reason this has not gone live as it ought to have, I am recording it to our computer, so I'll be able to share it then as soon as I've finished, okay? Folks, I'm telling you, this old preacher has been trying to tell people for decades, that there was a plan afoot within the Republican Party to set aside our Constitution, to establish permanent power, to create a hybrid government, a sort of theocracy / oligarchy with a figurehead dictator at the top of the heap. They wanted authoritarian because they do not want to have to go through all the aggravation of putting bills through Congress in order to make laws. They want someone to be able to rule by edict, like all good dictators. And this has been a plan within the Republican Party for a very long time. I've been warning and warning and warning that this is the case. And I've had people for decades looking at me like I'm crazy. Well, I hope you're waking up to the reality of what is going on in our country today. I want to start this podcast out with a 7.5 minute video that I found online, and it was put out by the Intellectualist website. It is quite an excellent video, and somebody is finally saying what I've been saying for months now, and I've been having a fit because nobody else is saying this, and they need to. The Democrats are trying to act like everything is somewhat normal in Washington, and they know good and bloody well that nothing in Washington is normal right now. Nothing. Federal courts are handing down judgments. Donald Trump is ignoring those judgments. There is no mechanism within our Constitution to hold him responsible, to enforce the decisions made by the court. This is one of the weaknesses within our system, folks. The only way that our democracy works, the only way, I've said this over and over and over again, the only way it works is when people of goodwill are at the helm. You see, the Constitution was written based on the premise that all of the actors, meaning all of the senators, all of the Congress people, the president, that all of these individuals would be people of goodwill seeking to uphold and defend the Constitution as written. However, it did not take into account that a conspiracy could arise and that there could be men and women, both in the White House as well as in the Senate and in the Congress, and even for that matter, in the judicial branch, who could conspire together to overthrow our government as we know it. Well, that is exactly what is now happening. Our government, as we have known it for 250 years, is finished. It is done. It is over. If you think that I am exaggerating, if you think that that is not the case, then my friend, I've got news for you. You are not awake. You're not paying attention. This is not hyperbole. This is not emotionalism. I have been saying for years and years that this was coming. This is what frustrates me out of my mind. You know, this is not something that I'm seeing now, and therefore I'm reacting to it. No, I've been screaming at the top of my lungs that this day was coming. Now I'm screaming at the top of my lungs to try to get a bunch of blind and deaf people to open their eyes and unstop their ears and see and hear what has happened. I'm not saying any longer what is happening. No, what has happen. It is over, folks. We are about to enter one of the most tumultuous, one of the most dangerous, one of the most life-threatening times this nation has ever seen. And quite frankly, the only hope we have is going to be when the fullness of time is come. And what I mean by that is in God's timing and what have you. I just pray to God there are people of courage. And some people aren't going to like what I'm about to say. Well, tough on you. The only thing that is going to rescue us from the nightmare that we are about to experience, and by that I mean economic nightmare, by that I mean legislative nightmare. There are going to be rules coming down, there are going to be laws coming down. All the idiots who voted for Donald Trump think they know what they were voting for. They think they know what they were going to get. The right-wing Christian population who thinks they were going to get a church-friendly, gospel-centric, authoritarian leader, which is what they wanted. Guess what, baby? You're not going to get anything like you thought you were going to get. But what you are going to get is exactly what you deserve. Many in the Christian community today, your children are going to wind up being drafted into the armed forces so they can fight the most idiotic, nonsensical, unnecessary wars that have ever been waged in the history of humanity. But you wanted to believe a liar, you wanted to believe a fraud, you wanted to believe a con man, you wanted to ignore the warnings of hundreds of people who had been done dirty by him over many, many decades, people that he had put out of business, people he had screwed over, if I may use that phrase. You wanted to ignore all that. You wanted to ignore former members of his cabinet, people who worked with him and saw what he is made out of. And like a bunch of brainless, mindless idiots, you wanted to vote for this man anyway because you know better. Based on your 3 minutes of seeing him on TV every day, you know better what he's made out of and what kind of character he is. You are stupid. You are as stupid as they come. My God have mercy. I'm going to tell you, when I hear people who have worked up close and personal with somebody sharing things, I'm going to tell you something. I do not dismiss what they say by any stretch of the imagination. No, because good people usually will have a good report. Good people will have folks who have worked with them and been around them, and they'll come back and say good things about them. It is not at all common that a good man is going to be torn to shreds by dozens and dozens and dozens of his former cabinet members, people who worked with him in the White House, people who have worked with him in business, people who have done business with him, people who have written books about him and have spent hundreds of hours in his presence, interviewing him, talking to him. No, and just because this narcissistic moron tells you, Oh, everybody's against me. Everybody just wants to destroy me. I'm such a good guy, and everybody just wants to ruin me. You buy it. Well, baby, you deserve what you're going to get. There are going to be some people, you may not watch this podcast today, but you may watch it a year or two from now. There are going to be people who see this podcast, and your child is going to die because of your decision. And frankly, I'm going to say it as plain as I can say it. You deserve everything you're going to get. Your loved ones are going to die because the new Nazi party is going to be committing mass genocide in this country like it is going out of style. They are not going to ship people off to concentration camps. No, because then they could ultimately be held responsible in an international court. So, what are they going to do? They are going to make policy decisions that they know good and bloody well, right off the starting line, are going to force millions of poor, disabled, sick, weak Americans to die. They're going to implement those policies because they see no need. They don't understand. The Nazis had a mindset that it made no sense whatsoever to work against nature and to try to preserve the life of people whom they viewed as offering nothing constructive to the human race. You're going to open up a war between the races. You're going to see the radical white supremacists and racists in this country being given permission by the executive branch to kill people of a different race or a different skin color. That's what you've got coming. That is what's going to happen. Some of you are white folk married to black folk. Some of you are black folk married to white folk. And I hate to tell you, but you're in a very dangerous place. Many of you are going to wind up losing your spouses. Many of you are going to wind up having your mixed race children dragged by chains behind cars, all because you wanted political power, all because you wanted cultural influence, all because you could not obey the mandate of Scripture and do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You would not obey the mandate of Scripture. You have faith, heaven unto yourself. You would not obey the mandate of Scripture, which in effect teaches simply live and let live. As long as you do not seek to limit the liberties of others, then chances are your liberties will not be challenged. Oh, but you wanted to listen to the false prophets. You wanted to listen to the false teachers and preachers who ran around like Henny Penny screaming, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. Oh, there's massive persecution against the church. Morons. There is no country in the world that has more religious freedom than does the United States of America. And God gave his people an out when it came to government mandating that they do things with which they may not personally agree. And the word of God said to obey the laws of the land, to obey every edict of the king, to obey every law, not some, not most, not those with which you agree, Oh, but no, fundamentalists and evangelical Christians, you don't let the Word of God tell you how you're to live and how you're to conduct yourself. Well, my friend, got news for you, baby. When you start putting the noose around somebody else's neck to limit their liberties or to take their lives because you don't like the way they live or you don't like the way they do things, I'm going to tell you how it works. There's a bigger fish in the same pond that's got a noose ready for your neck. It happens every single time. How many people right now are experiencing the deportation of their loved ones, and yet they voted for Donald Trump? And then they stand there and say, well, but I thought he was going to go after these other people. See, that's the problem, my foolish friend. There are no other people. These racist, demonic people see everything in black and white. They don't see shades of gray, baby. So your loved one doesn't look any different to them than any other Mexican or any other Salvadorian or any other Panamanian or Guatemalan or Nicaraguan. But you're stupid enough to think that because you view your loved one, you view your neighbor, you view your friend as an exception to the rule, that somehow or another the people who are setting policy are going to look at things the way you look at things. Wrong. You couldn't be more wrong. And I've got news for you. That is true of their coming against the liberties of transgendered people. That is true of their coming against the liberties of LGBT people. Yep. What do I mean? Well, what I mean is when they're done with those two groups, they're going to move on to the next and move on to the next and move on to the next. And I've got news for you, baby. You're going to fall into one of those groups. Mark my words. It's going to bite you, and it's going to bite you hard. It is going to cost lives of loved ones. I'm not standing here screaming fire, fire. Nope. Baby, the building's already burning. Everybody that has eyes can see it's burning down around us. I'm tired of screaming fire, fire. No, now I am just letting you know, thus saith the Lord, you have unleashed hell upon your nation. You have unleashed hell upon your neighbor. You have unleashed hell upon your community. And guess what? You have unleashed hell upon yourself. You cannot unleash a hurricane or a tornado in your community and expect that it's going to hit the neighbor's house because you don't like them, but it'll never touch mine. No, that's not how it works. Tried to warn people. The nation of Israel wanted a king. They wanted a king for very much the same reasons as so many evangelicals in America. And God warned them through Samuel. He said, tell them what a king is going to bring upon them. Tell them the nightmare that is unleashed when you give a man unlimited power. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. But did Israel want to listen? No, of course not. Well, I've got news for you, my friend. You, as Christians, are going to stand before God one day in the judgment, and God help your soul. I doubt highly you're going to be welcomed into the kingdom of heaven, because only those who have faithfully sought to live after the Lord's teachings and after his mandates, only those who have been faithful servants, those who have ignored everything the Word of God teaches because it doesn't suit them. According to my Bible, it says the unprofitable servant is cast into outer darkness where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth. You wanted to live Christianity your way. You wanted to write it so that it read the way you wanted it to read. You didn't want to love your neighbor. You didn't want to keep your face out of other people's business. Yes, the Word of God teaches that. You didn't want to treat others as you would like to be treated. You wanted to be able to be hateful. You wanted to be able to be corrosive. You wanted to be able to be malicious. Well, be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. You're going to reap what you have sown. Watch and see. All these idiotic people who want to believe that, oh, Donald Trump is a friend of the church. No, 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 no. No, you need to change the wording a little bit. Donald Trump, quote, was a friend of the church. Folks, if you think the church has been playing Trump and using Trump, you aren't very bright. Narcissists like Trump use other people. And all he needed was your vote so he could get back into the White House. Once he was back in, he was in a position to dismantle our government and destroy everything that we have known. And you thought you knew so much. You don't even know what the Department of Education does. You're going to find out very soon. When your kid wants to go to college and doesn't have the money, and guess what? The federal government is not going to offer them Pell Grants. No, because those come through the Department of Education. No, you're not going to be able to get a government guaranteed loan because that comes through the Department of Education. All these idiotic people who think they know so much and they know nothing. And it is going to bite you every day for years to come. Every single day, there's going to be something new biting you on the rear end. And it's all going to be because you wanted to support an evil, wicked man because he played you like the fiddle. He knew exactly what words to say. He knew exactly how to put a show on in order to convince you that he was sincerely on your side. And I'm going to tell you, I'm so aggravated and frustrated over this mess, it's not even funny. I'm ready for heaven, honey. I'm ready to go home. So I'm not worried about that. But I am a terrible worrier when it comes to other people. I've got a spouse, I've got my babies, my pets. Believe it or not, I worry about these things. Got former church members, got present church members, And I worry about all of these people. I worry about all of these things. When I say I worry, I mean, I'm concerned for them, okay? And I want to be here to do everything in my power to protect and defend them to my last breath. But just like everybody else these days, the Lord has had me, uh, He's allowed me, I should say, to be on disability because of health issues. Let Trump and the Republicans do to Social Security what they're planning on doing, and they'll do it. Let them do to Medicare, Medicaid what they're wanting to do, and they will. It's going to happen. There's no doubt about it. And if you don't have faith to believe God for enormous miracles, I don't mean little miracles, I mean huge miracles. If you don't believe God and find a way to believe God for a healing, then your diabetes is going to take your life. That cancer you've been fighting, you're not going to have the money to fight it anymore. Tommy and I moved to Alabama, and I nearly drowned on the co-payments and all the extra stuff that I had to pay here, that I was in programs in Texas that covered a lot of these things, so I didn't have to pay those things. And when we moved to Alabama, my God, my co-pays and expenses went through the roof. That's just co-pays. Just imagine if you have no health insurance. And of course, the Republicans have been trying for decades to destroy unions because unions interfere with corporate profit. And the people who finance the Republican Party are the ultra wealthy corporate America who don't want to pay a dime in taxes, but let a foreign adversary try to invade our shores, and you better good and well believe that those people are going to expect the federal government to defend their corporations and their businesses and their homes and their properties and their boats and their cars. Makes perfectly bloody stinking common sense that the rich should pay at the very least an equal percentage to everybody else. Don't give me this crap about how, if the rich have to pay taxes, then they're not able to invest in their businesses and they lose incentive to do more and blah, blah, blah. You're so full of baloney. You're so full of baloney. Elon Musk has far more at risk than I do if a foreign adversary were to begin to bomb our shores. His little outfit down there in Florida near Cape Canaveral, at Cape Canaveral, building rockets. You're talking about billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of equipment and billions of dollars worth of investment. Honey, he has a whole lot more to defend than my little house in North Alabama. This is all we've got. Corporate America has far more skin in the game. Why on earth should they not be paying a much more reasonable share Why should they not be contributing to those things which government is bound by the Constitution to provide, like defense? Who needs the roads, the highways, the infrastructure to be in the best possible condition? Who needs that? Me? A guy who travels from North Alabama to Nashville, Tennessee every weekend? I need it? No, I don't need it. Corporate America needs it because it's those roads, those highways, that infrastructure, those trains that help to carry their goods to market. God have mercy, how stupid can people be in this country? Yes, the wealthy should be paying their stinking share. They have so much more at risk, and yet who is paying to defend them? Who's paying to defend their mansions, their summer homes, their yachts, their RVs, their ATVs, their beachfront property, their ski chalets? Who's paying to defend all those things that these super wealthy own? You and I are. You and I are. We're paying it because Donald Trump brags that he hasn't paid taxes, and that's what makes him smart. There shouldn't be loopholes that allow the ultra wealthy to elude paying taxes. Shouldn't even be possible that they could do that. No. Common stinking sense says the more you have that relies upon the goods and services provided by government, then the more you should be contributing to the maintenance of those things. That's just common stinking sense, people. Oh, but the Republican base, like a bunch of brainless twits, have allowed the Republican Party to convince them for decades. Oh no, the ultra wealthy, bless God, they shouldn't have to pay any taxes, because when they don't have to pay taxes, then they invest more in their businesses. Bull! It has been a proven fact since the 1980s when Ronald Reagan was in office. And yes, I'm old enough to remember that. It has been a proven fact, my friend, that trickle-down economics is a joke. It is a pure and simple joke. They use their money to buy back stocks to artificially drive the price of their stocks upward for the sake of their investors, which in turn makes their stock look like a good investment. So more people buy into their. Talk about a Ponzi scheme. When a stock has been driven up in value artificially over and over again, these people are committing corporate fraud. Oh, but we have these poor little morons at the bottom of the heap, people that work their behinds off and pay rent because they can't even afford to buy a house. Drive around in some old junky car because they can't afford to buy a new car, can't afford to make payments. Still making a minimum wage that has been on the books now for over 20 years. and has not been raised. Why? Because the Democrats have opposed raising it? No! Because your Republican senators and congressmen have been fighting, moving the needle even one stinking inch. Oh, they want to crush unions because unions help to fight so that the worker can make a better wage, so that the worker can have better benefits. Oh, unless, of course, you absolutely love the health insurance that your part time job at Walmart affords you. Oh, that's right. They don't give you any, do they? No. That's why tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Americans who work for some of the biggest corporations in this country also collect food stamps. So you've got the Republicans working for Walmart to make sure they don't have to pay you anymore, to make sure they don't have to give you health insurance. They don't have to do anything. But by the same token, they're working to make certain that you cannot have union representation that might be able to fight so that you actually could make a living wage. So that instead of Walmart hiring millions of part-time workers who, according to federal law, can work up to 30 hours a week and still be considered part-time. And by hiring part-time employees, they don't have to give you any kind of benefit whatsoever. Oh, but you small folks, you're so smart, you're so brilliant, you know so much. Got news for you, folks, and I'm going to say it because I just have to say it the way I feel it. If you're so stinking smart that you're poor and you're broke and you can't afford to buy a house and you can't afford to make car payments, if you're so stinking brilliant that that's where you are in life, then what on earth makes you think you can make an intelligent decision when it comes to who should be running this country? You've been sitting back, every stinking one of you Republican base. You've been sitting back for decades. And the Republican Party has been raping you economically. They have been robbing you, screwing you blind. And you're too stupid to see it. And the Democratic Party has come along and they've tried to explain over and over again. The Republicans keep framing the argument a certain way, and y'all are so brilliant, with those college degrees that oh, that's right, you don't have a college degree. Half of the Republican base is lucky if they finished high school. But y'all are so brilliant, you're so smart, you know so much about economics, you know so much about how the world works. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just being absolute factual, folks. I'm being as straightforward as you can make it. You know so stinking much about everything. You don't know squat. And the Democrats for decades have been trying to educate the population. I think they give half of the moronic American public way too much credit. Hillary Clinton gave the American public way too much credit. She talked intelligently. She expounded on her plans. She expounded on her ideas. She explained everything. But you know what? If the Republicans tell you that it should be framed as all Democrats want to do is tax and spend, tax and spend, tax and spend. Yeah, they want to tax and spend. They want to tax the right people and they want to spend the right way so that the money that the government is spending is being invested in the people so the people can be the most successful and the most prosperous that they can be. Because the more successful they are, that includes single mothers who have to work and they have to pay to put their child in daycare. They wind up spending half their income just putting their children in daycare. How do you get ahead when that is the case? And the Democrats say, well, we want to provide a program that'll subsidize daycare. Oh, no, that's tax and spend. That's tax and spend. Hey, dingbat. When that mother is able to work and make a living, when that young person is able to go to college and earn a degree, their earning power becomes greater. What happens with those people? I'll tell you what happens with those people. Those people wind up paying more in taxes. I don't mean more, quote unquote, than they're paying now. I mean more in taxes in terms of they're making more. So even if they're paying the identical same percentage, it's a greater amount because their earning power has been increased. And the Democrats have tried to explain this. Oh, but no, I'm an idiot Republican. I believe in trickle down economics, even though for over 40 years now it has been factually proven over and over that trickle down economics is a joke. And when Joe Biden talked about investing in the American people from the ground up, and saying, no, the more we fertilize, the more we tend to the plant, then the bigger the plant grows and the more fruit you're able to get from it. That's what he was saying. That's what he was explaining. That's what he was expounding. Oh, but half of America is ignorant and unlearned and uneducated and doesn't know their backside from a hole in the ground. And they let Republican propaganda, they let Fox News, they let Newsmax frame everything for them in such a way that they believe every word that comes out of the GOP. And the people that are educated, the people that understand a little bit about economics, the people who understand a little bit about how the world works, the people who understand how government works, the people who understand how politics works. Those people hear all that jive talk on the Republican propaganda channels and gag because we know it is a joke and what they're saying is absurd. But you know what? You just let them keep framing it for you. You let them keep telling you what to think and how to think because after all, you don't know for yourself. You've never been educated in political science. You've never studied political science. You don't have a clue how complex politics is. You don't understand how the Constitution was written. And I say was written because I don't believe that from this day till God only knows when, I don't believe the Constitution has any bearing anymore in our government. I really don't. I don't believe it has 1 ounce of bearing anymore. But if you understood how our Constitution worked, past tense, then you would have understood that half the crap that was coming out of Trump's mouth was pure fantasy, just pure crap, garbage. Oh, but you believe that a president is a king and that he has absolute authority. No, that is not how the Constitution was written, because the men who wrote the Constitution had been under kings and they knew the nightmare of taxation without representation. And guess what, baby? That's where we're going to be very soon. Because when you have a dictator, when you have a theocracy, when you have an oligarchy, you have no representation. The guy at the top is going to decide, well, we need more tax money. Not because we want to implement programs to help people, because we don't do that. But we need more tax money because I want to have more money in my bank account. For decades, I've rubbed shoulders with men like Elon Musk and others who have wealth that is hundreds of times greater than my own. And I'm tired of that. I want to be as wealthy as they are. How do you think Trump's going to accomplish that, folks? I'll tell you how. He's going to tax the crap out of you. That's how. Say, oh, he's working to lower our debt and he's where. Let me tell you something. You watch and see. Trump is going to do everything in his power, like he's always done in business, to see how much debt we owe, that he can somehow screw the people that we owe out of. But he's not dealing with, a little subcontractor in New York City. Now he's dealing with international law and lending laws, and things are not going to be as easy as he'd like to think they are. But you watch and see. You watch and see if he doesn't. His whole method of operation is demonize, 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 and then do dirty. See, as long as I first make you out to be the bad guy, then I can do you dirty, and my idiot base will cheer for me and clap for me and applaud for me, because after all, these people are just doing us dirty and they're just mistreating us and they're just, and you watch and see. He's going to do it relative to our national debt. He's going to accuse countries that we owe of screwing us and doing us dirty and not giving us reasonable terms and blah, blah, blah. And he's going to try to worm out of as much debt as he can. He's trying to do away with every department, every agency in government, so that government does absolutely nothing for the people. Nothing. And you think, oh, he's so brilliant. Oh, he's so smart. Isn't Donald Trump amazing? Yeah, wait until your state that right now does not have an income tax. Wait until they have to implement one, because they're going to have to find a way to finance all the things that the government used to do and help states with that they no longer help states with. Oh, and by the way, when it was done federally, then poor states like Alabama and Georgia and Mississippi and Oklahoma and Arkansas, those poor states used to get back more money federally than they put in. And big, prosperous states like California and New York, oh, yeah, those are democratically controlled states, blue states. Those big, prosperous states that put enormous amounts of money into the federal budget, they were getting back just a few cents on the dollar compared to the poor states. But guess what, folks? When you take the federal out of it, that means Mississippi is going to have to find a way to get the money they need to do everything they need to do by themselves. How do you do that when you are the poorest stinking state in the union to begin with? Taxes in the poor states are going to drive people out of the poor states. They're going to have to leave. They're going to have to find somewhere to live where they can afford to live, because taxes in the poorer states are going to go through the roof, and no poor person's going to be able to afford to live there. See, that's how economics works, folks. It's like dominoes, but you've got to be smart enough. You've got to be educated enough. You've got to have enough cotton picking brain matter between your two ears to understand how these things work. The reason Democrats would approach certain issues from a federal level is because that is the only way that you could make the playing field level for everyone in all 50 states. If we all pool our money, I'm going to try to make it as simple as I can make it for my simple minded Republican friends. If you pool your money, then the fact is the wealthier states, the better off states, they're able to take care of a lot of stuff themselves. So they don't have to take as much from the Department of Education. They don't have to take as much from the Department of the Interior. They don't have to take as much from the Department of Defense, even, or from the Department of Transportation. But those poor states that have many, many people who struggle and suffer, those states benefit because they may pay only, I'm going to use round numbers, Mississippi may only pay $100 million annually into the federal budget, but they get back in goods and services and in subsidies and what have you. They may get back 200 million annually, because when you don't have a dictator in office, you don't have somebody sitting up there looking at each state as though everybody in that state is a friend or everybody in that state is an enemy. Got news for you, folks. Just because California is a red state, a blue state, by no means does that mean everybody in California is Democrat. No. Even if the Republican population were only, let's say, 40%, that's still millions and millions of people. Oh, but when you have a dictator in power like good old Mr. Trump, all he sees, I said it earlier, is black and white. California's a red state. Hallelujah. Glory to God. So therefore, he's willing to withhold funding. He's willing to withhold help to California, which in the process is hurting tens of millions of Republican voters, all because he's trying to punish Democrat voters. And I'm going to tell you something, he's not planning on there ever being another legitimate election in this country. It'll never happen. If you think that the Russians have not assisted the Republican Party in learning how to operate a corrupt election, just like they run, so that every election Putin comes off with, oh, he got the hugest percentage of the vote. Why, he got 85% of the vote. Folks, never happened. Never happened. There are not that many people in Russia that are thrilled with Putin, but the elections are fixed. I got news for you. Watch and see. Watch and see. If we have elections, watch and see if all of a sudden the Republicans and Trump aren't getting a huge percentage of the vote. Now, you see right now with everything Trump is doing, you see how people, Republicans, are having a fit at town halls. They're screaming and hollering. You can see he's not very popular. Oh, but just watch and see how somehow miraculously Republicans are going to do incredibly well. And they're going to say, see, the population agrees with what we're doing. They support what we're doing. When in fact, the majority of the American population feels completely the opposite to that. But this is what you decided you wanted to elect, my Republican friend. You wanted corruption. You wanted the most dishonest, disloyal person on the planet to be in charge of everything. You've given the keys to the kingdom to Lucifer. And then you're going to sit back and wonder how come you're suffering and struggling. Listen, I want to share a couple of things with you today. I've done an hour of free fall. I didn't get a chance to put this visual. I was going to share a visual of this article with you online, but unfortunately I was not able to. Forbes did an article several days back. Trump confirms he's serious about wanting Canada as the 51st state. And in this article, it was the former Prime Minister of Canada who was saying that at a meeting that he held with a bunch of business leaders in Canada. And he said, folks, let me warn you now, this guy is not kidding. He said, this is a serious threat. Bloomberg News also put out an article And this article in part read, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau told executives gathered at an economic summit on Friday that he believes U.S. President Donald Trump desires to annex the northern nation, that this threat is a real thing due to the abundance of critical minerals that are found in Canada. Trudeau made the remarks to dozens of business leaders and policymakers gathered in Toronto to discuss how Canada can diversify trade away from the U.S. given Trump's tariff threats. The comments were confirmed by a senior government official who asked not to be identified, discussing the closed door meeting. That was an article that appeared in Bloomberg News. I want to share something with you. I borrowed this. I hope our friends at Midas Touch Network don't mind. I'm going to share with you a short segment from a video they put out today. And the reason I'm using their video is I couldn't find the video from an original news source that they shared. So I kind of have to use theirs because that's the only way I can share it. But I want you to pay attention to this now, folks.
A truly bizarre and unhinged morning for Donald Trump. But what else is new with this Trump regime? Donald Trump held a press conference in the Oval Office where he and his Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, a former Fox News host, announced that they were going to be having a successor to the F-35 jet, which they were going to call, surprise, surprise, the F-47. So as they're gutting Medicaid, as they're calling Social Security a Ponzi scheme, they say they're putting a lot of money into an F-47. But then Donald Trump started talking about his favorite topic, which is conquering Canada. He talked about how it was an artificial line that separates the United States and Canada, and he wants it, and he wants to take it now. Play this clip.
And very, very close. No, there might be, but it would, you know, you have that artificial line that goes, that straight artificial, that looked like it was drawn by a ruler. Somebody with I don't mean a ruler like a king, I mean like a ruler, this way. And it's just an artificial line that was drawn in the sand or in the ice. You know, and can I tell you, Peter, just, you add that to this country, what a beautiful landmass, the most beautiful landmass anywhere in the world. And it was just cut off for whatever reason. It would be great. Now,
Donald Trump continues and says, look, no, I really mean it. I want Canada to become a state. I'm not joking. I want to take it over. Play this clip.
Nobody knows that. Nobody knows that. They have up to 400%. They have a couple of tariffs at 400%. Nobody knows that. Nobody talks about that. And remember, with Canada, we don't need their cars. We don't need their lumber. We don't need their energy. We don't need anything from Canada. And yet it costs us $200 billion a year in subsidy to keep Canada afloat. So when I say they should be a state, I mean that. I really mean that. Because we can't be expected to carry a country that is right next to us on our border. It would be a great state. It would be a cherished state.
Look, he couldn't be more clear about what he's saying. And as I've reported before, Canada's responding in kind. They are boycotting America. They are boycotting.
Okay, I'm having a little bit of trouble here. As I said a moment ago, I'm not sure if this is going out live or not. I've done this in the past and thought it was not going out, only to turn around and find that it was indeed going out. And so I decided I would go ahead and, just go ahead and do the podcast. And if it's recording, then I will share it later. I'm going to re-air it As soon as I'm finished, I'm going to put it out. So you'll be watching it as though we're live at that point. But I actually started at 4 o'clock. I don't know what on earth is going on with our system today, but I hope to God I'll check the audio on that video before I share this and see if indeed it was working, because for some reason I can't even hear it here in the studio. All right. The intellectualist, I've been hollering and screaming, why on earth is no one in the podcast community? Why on earth is no one in the news community? Why are they not reporting the truth? Why are they not telling people that we have effectively, we're in the midst of a coup? Our democracy is over, folks. It's not even, I can't even say anymore that it's on its way out. No, it's over. It's over. When you have a president in office who ignores the federal courts and does as he pleases, and I said in an earlier podcast, one of the weaknesses in our democracy, one of the weaknesses in our Constitution is that there is not a means written in whereby the decisions of federal courts can be carried out by some authority over the executive branch. There's nothing in our Constitution written that provides for that. So when you have a bad actor, and you have people like the Republicans who for years have wanted to discard our Constitution and establish a new form of government, they look for the weak spots, they look for the weaknesses, and they said, all we have to do is do the things we want to do. And yeah, people will take us to court, but who cares? Because if we ignore the courts, there is absolutely nothing the court can do. They can't enforce it in any possible way. Normally, the judgments of a federal court can be enforced by the U.S. Marshals. However, the U.S. Marshals fall under the authority and the direction of the DOJ, the Department of Justice. And Trump, of course, has the sycophant at the head of the DOJ. So therefore, the marshals are worthless. They're worthless to us. I told you, folks, this plan could not have gone off if Donald Trump were in it alone. There's no way. Hitler could not have turned Germany from a constitutional democracy to a dictatorship in 53 days if he did not have the support of the Nazi Party, okay, as well as some other figures in government. It is impossible. If Trump were alone a bad actor, then there is the tool available to remove him, which is impeachment. Twice Democrats impeached him, and twice the Republicans covered for him and made certain that he got away with what he had done scot-free twice. That should have told you right then and there that the Republican Party was fully complicit, that what Donald Trump was doing was in keeping with the Republican agenda that they have had on the books. Folks, they have been talking about wanting to do these things. They've been talking about wanting to do away with all kinds of agencies. They've been talking about wanting to do away with regulations. You know, they've been talking about all this. They've been talking about wanting to open up our unspoiled natural lands for oil drilling and for forestry and all that, they've been talking about these things for decades. The only people who aren't aware of that are people who haven't been paying attention from word go. This stuff goes back, my God, before Ronald Reagan was in office. So when Donald Trump came in, and I said when he first went in the first time and he started doing some stuff, I told people, I said, he is doing what the Republicans have wanted to do for decades. Everything he's doing is what the Republicans have wanted to do for decades. There is nothing new under the sun. And I couldn't understand how people could not see this, okay? Well, this video is 7.5 minutes long. It was produced by the intellectual, and I want to share it with you now. 7.5 minutes. Folks, you need to watch this.
Saturday, March 15th, 2025, may have seemed unremarkable to most Americans.
Whoops, hold on. Hold on a minute. I'm sorry. For some reason, this video, where on earth is it? This video is not showing as it ought to be showing. Let me try it again real quick and see what happens here.
Saturday, March 15th, 2025, may have seemed unremarkable to most Americans, but in time, history will remember it as Black Saturday, the moment the United States ceased to function as a constitutional democracy. For the first time in modern American history, a sitting president openly defied a direct federal court order, and nothing happened. No intervention, no enforcement, no consequences. A legal ruling was issued, and the White House simply ignored it. Inside the White House, the decision was not about law, it was about power. A federal judge ruled against the administration. The debate inside Trump's team was not whether the ruling was legal, but whether they could get away with ignoring it. They decided they could, and they were right. This was not a clash between equal branches of government. It was the moment the judiciary was exposed as powerless. The courts do not have an army. They rely on compliance. But a court that cannot enforce its rulings is not a court, it is a suggestion box. And a presidency that can ignore the courts without consequence is no longer constrained by law. It is an untouchable executive. Trump did not declare the end of judicial authority in a speech, he demonstrated it in practice. This is how democratic systems collapse, not with a single act, but with the normalization of defiance, the expectation that a ruling can simply be brushed aside. This moment did not happen in isolation. It happened because every prior attempt to hold Trump accountable has failed. The system tried, and at every turn, it proved incapable of stopping him. Impeachment failed twice. Criminal cases stalled. The Supreme Court refused to rule on his disqualification. Congress never moved to check his power. At each step, Trump tested the system, and the system flinched. He learned that laws are only as strong as the institutions willing to enforce them. And so when faced with a court ruling, he did what he had been conditioned to do. He ignored it, and nothing happened. The judiciary was already weakened by years of erosion. But in 2024, the Supreme Court itself ensured that when this moment arrived, there would be no legal recourse left. In a landmark ruling, the court expanded presidential immunity to such an extent that the office of the presidency is now functionally above the law. A president can commit crimes while in office and face no immediate accountability. And now, with Black Saturday, Trump has proven that he can ignore court rulings entirely without consequence. This is not the separation of powers. It is the absorption of power into a single branch. The courts were supposed to be the last line of defense. Instead, they have been reduced to issuing rulings the executive can freely ignore. Fox News did not issue the order, but it made this moment possible. After Trump ignored the court, Fox put the judge's face on screen. They did not need to tell viewers that judicial rulings no longer mattered. They had already trained millions to believe it. The courts were framed as corrupt, as partisan, as enemies of the people. Trump simply followed through on that conditioning. This is why the phrase, "you cannot see the forest for the trees," is so powerful in this moment. The trees are the individual events. Trump ignoring a court ruling. The Supreme Court making the presidency immune from criminal accountability. Congress failing to act repeatedly. The media normalizing the breakdown of democracy. The forest is the overarching reality. The U.S. government is no longer constrained by constitutional limits. The judiciary has been rendered powerless through precedent and selective enforcement. The executive branch now decides which laws apply to itself. Most people living through history don't realize they are inside a moment of collapse because each event, taken alone, does not seem like the end of democracy. The shock of one ruling being ignored does not feel catastrophic. The Supreme Court deciding a president is immune from prosecution feels like just another legal controversy. Congressional inaction feels like business as usual. The media's treatment of this moment as just another chapter in the ongoing Trump saga makes it easy to assume the system will self-correct. But when viewed together, it becomes undeniable that the system has already failed. This is why people will look back on Black Saturday and wonder why it wasn't immediately recognized as the breaking point. Because when you are inside the collapse, it feels like just another day. The weight of history is often invisible in the moment, its consequences spread out over years. But the truth is unavoidable. This is not just another legal dispute. It is not another chapter in partisan warfare. It is not an escalation of existing dysfunction. It is the end of constitutional government. No democracy that has reached this stage has ever recovered without major structural change. This is not just an escalation of political crisis. It is the moment when constitutional rule is replaced with raw executive power. This is not like Andrew Jackson defying the Supreme Court in 1832. When Jackson ignored Worcester v. Georgia, America was an evolving democracy. The role of the Supreme Court was still in flux, and the country's institutions were not yet fully formed. Today, America is a collapsing democracy. The Supreme Court's authority is settled law. The difference is that this time, the institutions were expected to work. Andrew Jackson defied the Supreme Court in an era when executive power was not yet defined. Trump is erasing the limits on executive power in a system where they were already supposed to be settled. Jackson faced political opposition. Trump controls his party completely. In Jackson's time, Congress still operated as a counterweight. Today, Congress is a rubber-stamp body that enables presidential overreach rather than restraining it. The courts were supposed to be the final check. That check no longer exists. We have passed the event horizon. This is not about democracy in crisis anymore. It is about what comes after democracy. The system that once absorbed and corrected these shocks is no longer functioning. The shock of January 6th did not lead to democratic renewal. It was a preview of what was coming. The rollback of reproductive rights in 2022 was not just about abortion. It was proof that legal protections could be stripped away at will. The Supreme Court's expansion of presidential power in 2024 did not just change legal precedent, it ensured that the next time a president defied a court order, there would be no enforcement mechanism to stop it. That is where we are now. The end of the courts as a meaningful check on power. There is no going back to the America of the 1990s. No return to a time when presidential power was constrained, when the judiciary had the final say, when law enforcement agencies functioned as independent institutions rather than tools of political power. That system is already gone. Some will say this is alarmist, that democracy cannot end so quietly. But collapse does not feel like collapse when you are inside it. It feels like just another legal story, just another Saturday in America. Until one day you look up and realize there is nothing left to save. Black Saturday will be remembered as the day the constitutional system failed. Please subscribe to the Intellectualist's new YouTube channel where we present insightful videos analyzing the current events shaping the world. Turn on notifications to receive the latest updates from the channel.
Well, there you go, folks. Finally, somebody is telling the truth. Somebody is saying what needs to be said. I've been warning prophetically since about a year or two before Obama left office. I knew the Spirit of the Lord showed me that as Obama left office, he spoke to me and said, all hell was going to break out in this country. Donald Trump came on the scene and all hell broke out in this country. Even during the 4 years that Biden was in office, Donald Trump stayed on the scene. He kept the confusion going. He kept the lie going. He kept the propaganda going. He claimed to be campaigning for president. Nobody campaigns for 4 years practically. That's insane. No, he did that so that he could frame any legal action taken against him for the insurrection. He could frame it as they're coming after their political opponents. That was the whole reason he played that game, okay? But he kept the propaganda machine going, and of course, Newsmax was right there behind him. Fox News was right there behind him. They made sure that they never missed a step, unlike all other presidents who know how to step out of the way, let the new president, do what he's going to do without interference or interruption. No, Trump didn't do that. He kept the chaos going. So even during the 4 years that he was out of office and Biden was in office, we still had the constant chaos, still had constant lies, still had constant propaganda, kept his face in the news constantly. And so what the Spirit of the Lord spoke to me, I absolutely believe happened. That as Obama was leaving office, the Lord said, all hell is going to break loose in this country. And it did. And I told our church in Dallas prophetically, I said, I don't know how long this is going to last. I cannot say at this moment that I know exactly how it's going to manifest itself, because I don't. All I knew is the Lord told me there was going to be chaos and confusion and all kinds of stuff. Well, then when Donald Trump announced his run for the Republican nomination for president, then the Lord showed me more stuff, and I was able to make more specific declarations related to him going into Washington and what was going to happen, the actions he would take that would cost millions of American lives. They would call it policy making decisions, when in fact it was going to be genocide. We had COVID, which came along and proved my point, absolutely proved my point. We never in the history of this nation had a president who peddled false information, garbage, insane information. And he made sure he was on TV every single day. And he kept peddling the same false information every single day. And tens of thousands of people who trusted the information he was giving wound up dead. I spoke to a lady recently, and she told me, she said her brother passed away with COVID, and he was only in his early 50s. She said he had actually always been very healthy and, did very well. She said, but he believed everything Trump had to say, apparently. And he wound up at the age, I think she said like 52 or something. She said it hit him, and boy, she said it didn't take long and he was dead. So tens of thousands, hundreds, we really don't know the exact number of people who wound up dead, specifically because they bought into the lies, the propaganda, the false information that Trump was peddling. Now he is doing everything in his power to get rid of all medical agencies that would issue warnings and advice and issue any kind of counsel as to how to react to certain things. So what he's doing is he is making the way so that in the future, the only information Americans will get, quote unquote, official information, will be the information that comes from him. After what we saw with COVID, you know how that's going to play out, folks. You know that there's no guesswork here. You know how that is going to play out. But the new Nazi party, which is what I call the mega Republican Party, the new Nazi Party, because that's exactly what they are. I began to warn of this from the first day Trump announced his run for president. I said, this man is following Adolf Hitler's playbook. I really I was hopeful that he would never get elected. I really didn't think there were enough stupid people in America. I didn't think that there were that many stupid people in this country that would vote for him. I really didn't. I gave Americans a whole lot more credit. I said, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? The majority of people in this country are going to see right through this demonic lying jackal, and they're going to see right through it. I warned the church. I said, before Obama was out of office, I warned the church. I said, when this trouble that is coming is over, I don't believe we're going to be a democracy anymore. So I'm not going to declare at this moment for a fact that that is the case. I said, but that is the feeling that I have. I don't believe we're even going to be a democracy anymore. And Trump came in and the chaos, and I kept praying. Folks, you have no idea. I've been living this all my life. I could tell you story after story after story after story of how the Lord has used me prophetically. And believe me when I tell you, when the Lord has me deliver a word of warning, when he has me deliver a negative message, I pray. I'm not kidding. I'm serious. I pray that I'm wrong. I hope and pray that I'm wrong, especially when God shows me some things. And in 2008, I believe it was, I had a dream, and he showed me a situation where major cities were under martial law, and they were literally driving through the streets and on bullhorns saying, all citizens are to remain inside their homes. If you so much as step out on your front porch, you will be shot dead, no questions asked. They did not want anybody, they didn't want to risk somebody getting out of their house and being able to run and get together with like other people, who might form a militia or something, So the threat was, if you so much as go out your front door, you will be shot on sight. And in my dream, I literally watched people opening the front door of their apartment or their house and stepping out, kind of looking at, and all of a sudden getting a bullet in the head. I saw this in the dream. It was the most troubling thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Then I saw them cutting off power, gas, water, utilities, internet, and telling entire cities, when y'all calm down and when y'all decide you want to listen to us, we'll turn the utilities back on. And then they literally did it one item at a time. Like they turned the water back on. And then after a while, they'd say, well, if y'all continue to act right, we'll turn on the gas. And, if y'all continue to act right, we'll turn on the power. And it was a way of them beating people into submission, forcing entire cities, entire communities to submit. And it is terrorism, is what it is. It's planting fear in people so that they're like, oh, whatever you do, don't do anything against Mr. Trump, or else um, we could wind up having all our utilities cut off again. And so it's terrorism. It's planting fear in people in order to force people into compliance and force people to be cooperative with the dictatorial um, leadership. And this is why, when I had this vision, this dream in 2008, I knew there was a dictator involved in that dream. And this is why I told the church, well, actually, yeah, that's right. Now that I think about it, that was in the same time. I didn't even look at that. I didn't even think about it. That was in the same time frame. No, that was when Obama was first going into office, because then he won 2008 and 2016. No, 2008. He served until 2016. And then Trump went in. No, Trump went in 16, right, till 20. Then Biden 20 to 24. I'm sorry, folks. Don't mind me trying to get all my facts straight here. Long story short, I knew that at some point we were headed for a dictatorship. I knew that. I knew that. But when the Lord tells me stuff, I try very, very hard not to overspeak. In other words, I don't want to add a detail that He hasn't given me, because the minute you start doing that, you can be wrong. As long as you're sharing what the Lord said, it's going to be right. But if I start adding, conjecture, if I start trying to reason things out and to be honest, in my younger days, I kind of did that sometimes. I tried to reason things out. He told me, and I would have thoughts in my head as to how it was going to play out. And it didn't play out the way I thought it played out. It absolutely did what I said it was going to do, but not the way that I had kind of reasoned it out. So anyway, when Trump came on the scene and was actually elected, then I knew the Holy Ghost I knew this man was following Hitler's playbook from day one, just in his campaigning. So if he's using Hitler's playbook in campaigning, then he obviously has the ultimate plan of dictatorship, because that was what Hitler was aiming for. So I knew that was Trump's plan. Well, I had been saying for literally over 2 decades, I had been prophesying that there was a plan within the Republican Party to overthrow our current government and to establish a new form of government. And so, knowing that from 20, 25 years ago, whatever it was, then when the Trump thing happened, then I was like, oh, okay, wait a minute. This then is the realization of what the Lord had showed me 20 years ago. You see what I'm saying? And then, of course, we've had proof that I was right with the publishing of Project 2025. I did some research online and found out Project 2025 has been in the works, not completed, but in the works, going back as far as 1981, folks. That's how far back the origins of this plan have been. I want to finish up this podcast today. I'm going to use 20 more minutes, and that'll be 2 hours. I realize now that this did not go out live. I have no idea why. Our streaming software is messing up or something, okay? but I am recording it and I'm going to share it as quickly as I can. It's going to take a while, so it probably won't air before maybe 8, 9 o'clock. But I am going to share it. But I'm going to be sharing the recorded version of it, and I'm doing it as though I were live. Okay. Alternate is a website online, and they did an excellent article on January 8th, 2025, titled Historian Reveals How Hitler Dismantled Democracy in Less Than 2 months. And this article is by a Carl Gibson. And I want to read just a few paragraphs to you real quickly. After Nazi dictator Adolf Hitler was appointed chancellor in 1933, he promptly packed the government full of loyalists and used Weimar Germany's constitution to turn himself into an absolute dictator. Historian Timothy W. Ryback, who is the director of the Institute for Historical Justice and Reconciliation in The Hague, described the process in which Hitler rapidly disintegrated Germany's constitutional republic in just 53 days. Ryback noted that after the failed beer hall putsch, in which the Nazi leader attempted to violently overthrow the government, Hitler abandoned his goal of violent revolution in favor of destroying the country's democratic system through legal means. Quote, having spent a decade in opposition politics, Hitler knew firsthand how easily an ambitious political agenda could be scuttled, end quote, Ryback wrote. Quote, he had been co-opting or crushing right-wing competitors and paralyzing legislative processes for years. And for the previous 8 months, he had played obstructionist politics, helping to bring down 3 chancellors and twice forcing the president to dissolve the Reichstag, which is their legislative branch of government, and call for new elections, end quote. After his election in 1933, listen, folks, when I tell you Donald Trump is following Hitler's playbook to the bloody letter, listen. After his election, Hitler was elected or appointed in 1933. Hitler bragged that the German electorate welcomed him with jubilation and rolled out a plan to force out longtime career civil servants with political stooges committed to his vision. He then executed a plan to get 2/3 of the Reichstag, which is the German parliamentary body, to pass an empowering law that would allow him to centralize his authority and govern by decree. Hitler was convinced that he needed the empowering law to follow through on his campaign promises, which, according to Ryback, included calls to revive the economy, reduce unemployment, increase military spending, withdraw from international treaty obligations, and purge the country of foreigners he claimed were poisoning the blood of the nations, and exact revenge on political opponents. Folks, every word of that Donald Trump is doing. Every word of that. He also notably ran on draining I can't read the German words, but it means the parliamentary swamp, and his economic agenda, including sweeping new tariffs on grain imports. Ryback, who has authored multiple books about the rise of Hitler and the Nazi regime, explained that Hitler becoming an absolute dictator was a significant comeback story. After the beer hall push, Hitler was jailed and his movement was discredited. And when the Nazi Party lost the 1932 election and 34 Reichstag seats, he was apparently contemplating suicide, and he had effectively given up all hope. However, when President Paul von Hindenburg agreed after a negotiating session to make him chancellor and gave him 2 cabinet posts to fill, Hitler picked 2 staunch loyalists, Wilhelm Frick and Hermann Göring, and put his 2 ministers to work targeting the Weimar Republic's key democratic pillars. Listen: free speech, due process, public referendum, in other words, the right to protest and what have you, and states' rights. As part of his duties as Minister of the Interior, Frick had oversight over Germany's 18 federated states and the press. Ryback wrote that he focused on suppressing the opposition press and centralizing power in Berlin, which included banning the daily newspapers run by the Communist Party and the Socialist Democrats. Meanwhile, Göring used his position as minister without portfolio, which included oversight of the state of Prussia, which encompassed 2/3 of Germany, to purge state security forces. Hitler then put a Schlecherlass, or shooting decree, in place. Listen: allowing police to shoot on sight without fear of accountability. And following the Reichstag fire, which was rumored to have been a false flag operation by the Nazis to scapegoat the Communist Party, which was the Nazis' biggest enemy, Hitler used the arson attack to successfully push for new powers, allowing him to imprison his political opponents. Watch and see if these things don't all happen. Watch and see. I'm reading this to you, so forewarned is forearmed. You'll know when you see it coming to pass. You'll be able to say, Pastor Charles told us he was following Hitler's playbook to the letter. Just watch and see. The Communist Party was banned, as Hitler had wanted since his first cabinet meeting, and members of the opposition press were arrested, their newspapers shut down. Ryback wrote, Goring had already been doing this for the past month, but the courts had invariably ordered the release of detained people. With the decree in effect, the courts could not intervene. Thousands of communists and social democrats were rounded up. I told you folks, I recently, and I'm not one who runs around saying, I had a dream, I had a dream. To be honest with you, I'm not a dreamer. Of course, the Bible said your young men will see visions and your old men will dream dreams. I guess I'm getting to that age now where the Lord is communicating to me more and more through dreams. He used to communicate to my great grandmother like you wouldn't believe through dreams. I mean, he he spoke to my great grandmother in through dreams so many times, and the stuff she dreamed will blow your mind. But anyway, but I had a dream recently, and I shared this on an earlier podcast where Trump had law enforcement people literally going into the Congress and into the Senate and arresting Democrats right off the floor of the House, right off the floor of the Senate, claiming, you see, what the Democrats should have done, what Biden should have done, what Merrick Garland should have done. They should have prosecuted Trump the day after the 20th when Biden went into office. They should have prosecuted him immediately as his role in the insurrection. He is the leader of an insurrection against our government. That is what they should have done. But they allowed themselves to be motivated by fear and weakness, and we don't want. There'll be there'll be all kinds of civil unrest. Yeah, but the difference is we'd have somebody in the White House at that point who's wanting to maintain our republic. So instead, they turn around and they gave him back the keys to the White House. Now he's going to turn around like he always does and project, and he's going to suggest, he lies like he breathes, he's going to lie that they have a plan to overthrow him and to coup, that the Democrats have this plan, and the Supreme Court has given me the power. Anything I do, as long as it's within, my presidential duties, it's not illegal. What's happened? The Supreme Court, my friend, has given him what Hitler wanted, which was the ability to rule by decree. Well, the Supreme Court handed him that in the decision that they made concerning presidential immunity. So now the Atlantic, another marvelous publication, they have an article. This is the article, the actual article by Timothy W. Ryback, the historian that's mentioned in the alternate article. And this one is dated Wednesday, January 8th, 2025 as well. And I just want to read a few paragraphs from this, and then I'll be done for today. 92 years ago this month, on Monday morning, January 30th, 1933, Adolf Hitler was appointed the 15th Chancellor of the Weimar Republic. In one of the most astonishing political transformations in the history of democracy, Hitler set about destroying a constitutional republic through constitutional means. What follows is a step-by-step account of how Hitler systematically disabled and then dismantled his country's democratic structures and processes in less than 2 months' time. Specifically, 1 month, 3 weeks, 2 days, 8 hours, and 40 minutes. The minutes, as we will see, mattered. Hans Frank served as Hitler's private attorney and chief legal strategist in the early years of the Nazi movement, while later awaiting execution at Nuremberg for his complicity in Nazi atrocities. Frank commented on his client's uncanny capacity for sensing the potential weakness inherent in every formal form of law, and then ruthlessly exploiting that weakness. Following his failed beer hall push on November 1923, Hitler had renounced trying to overthrow the Weimar Republic by violent means, but not his commitment to destroying the country's democratic system, a determination he reiterated in a, quote, legality oath before the Constitutional Court in September 1930. Invoking Article 1 of the Weimar Constitution, which stated that the government was an expression of the will of the people, Hitler informed the court that once he had achieved power through legal means, he intended to mold the government as he saw fit. It was an astonishingly brazen statement. So, through constitutional means, the presiding judge asked, Jawohl, Hitler replied. By January 1933, the fallibilities of the Weimar Republic, whose 181 article constitution framed the structures and processes for its 18 federated states, were as obvious as they were abundant. Having spent a decade in opposition politics, what did Trump do the whole 4 years that Biden was in office? He sat there and ran the show from behind the scenes. The Republicans did everything he told them to do and didn't do everything that he told them not to do. Hitler knew firsthand how easily an ambitious political agenda could be scuffled. He had been co-opting or crushing right-wing competitors and paralyzing legislative processes for years. And for the previous 8 months, he had played obstructionist politics, helping to bring down 3 chancellors and twice forcing the president to dissolve the Reichstag and call for new elections. When he became chancellor himself, Hitler wanted to prevent others from doing unto him what he had done unto them. Though the vote share of his National Socialist Party, the Nazis, had been rising, in the election of September 1930, following the 1929 market crash, they had increased their representation in the Reichstag almost 9-fold, from 12 delegates to 107. And in the July 1932 elections, they had more than doubled their mandate to 230 seats. How many mega Republicans have been getting elected. They've been trying to replace a so-called old guard, true, genuine Republican with mega Republicans. And this is why so many of these who aren't necessarily mega Republicans are still going along with everything that the mega Republicans are trying to do, the new Nazis are trying to do, because they're fearful of being primaried and replaced with a mega Republican. In the July 1932 elections, they had more than doubled their mandate to 230 seats. They were still far from a majority. Their seats amounted to only 37% of the legislative body. And the larger right-wing coalition that the Nazi Party was a part of controlled barely 51% of the Reichstag. Are you hearing this, people? The larger party that the Nazis were a part of, mega GOP, same identical dynamic, okay? Same identical. They didn't come up as a whole brand new party. They came up as a movement within an existing party, okay? And right now, the situation's almost identical. The numbers are literally almost identical. They only had 37% of quote unquote mega support in the Republican Party is down at somewhere around 33 to 37%, 40%, let's call it. So the numbers are literally almost identical. And he knew that in a multi-party political system with shifting coalitions, his political calculus was not so simple. He believed that an empowering law was crucial to his political survival. But passing such a law, which would dismantle the separation of powers, grant Hitler's executive branch the authority to make laws without parliamentary approval, to allow Hitler to rule by decree, bypassing democratic institutions and the Constitution. That required the support of 2/3 majority in the fractious Reichstag. So he knew he couldn't get this rule by decree order, empowering law. He couldn't get it done with the numbers that he had in the House. But here's where the U.S. Constitution is different than the Weimar Constitution, because in our situation, there's a different weakness, and the weakness is in the inability of the federal court to enforce its decisions and its rulings. So therefore, Trump is doing exactly what Hitler did, but he's doing it slightly different because our situation is different. He's ignoring what the courts say. He's doing everything. I heard a Republican senator saying something the other day about, well, I agree with him doing everything he's doing by presidential order. Yeah, he's trying to rule by decree. And there's no way we can stop him. There is no constitutional way we can stop him. Folks, it's over. It's over. It's over. The great American experiment is over. Our friends to the north are terrified because we now have an expansionist dictator. And I'm going to tell you again, I prophesied he was going to do that. I said he was going to do that. And I'm going to go a step further. I guarantee you he'll want to go after Mexico as well. He's going to claim we need the entire North American continent to be one singular country. He hates Mexicans. He despises Mexico. Like Hitler, he will go after the Mexicans as though they're Jews, so to speak. And you will see an annihilation and destruction of a people like you've never seen in human history. We're looking at the possibility of another Holocaust, folks. It won't be the Jews in this instance who are targeted yet, but this is the situation we're in. Folks, this is not a game. I cannot tell you exactly how this thing is going to play out. I don't know. I wish I did, but then again, sometimes I'm glad I don't. Because like I said, I worry about people and, I know I've made some preparation. I've done some things. I'm not talking about none of it. If we wind up going missing and we're no longer on the internet and we're not able to speak to you anymore, if they haven't turned off the internet by then you can understand that we have tried to get on the ark, and God willing, we'll be able to ride out the storm on the ark that we have built. I am not even sharing that information with friends and family. I'm going to tell you something, folks. I've got family members who know that I operate in the prophetic, and they respect that. They fully respect that because they've seen it and they know. My former partner told me one time, Jason said to me one time, he said, "How on earth?" He said, "The Lord shows you so many things and then it happens, and and it can be any number of types of things." I've shared in the past, I believe I shared on my podcast just some little examples. I was very friendly with a wonderful man of God. He was Trinitarian Pentecostal. He pastored a beautiful church in East Texas, had a good number of people, a good church. And he just, for some reason, I don't know why, I don't see myself as the most lovable guy on the planet. My personality can be a little on the rough side for some people. But he fell in love with me. He and his wife fell in love with me and my ministry, and I was apostolic. But I used to go preach for him in his church. And one day he asked me if my brother, who was living with me at the time, my teenage brother, would go to his house and have dinner with he and his wife after church. I went and preached for him. He said, "I want to talk to you about something." And I went out to the car, and my little brother got in the car, and all of a sudden, this heaviness came over me. The Spirit of the Lord came over me, and I was consumed by this horrible heaviness. And I literally just broke out weeping. I just started to weep, and I put my head against the steering wheel of the car, and I just started weeping. And my baby brother said to me, he said, "What's wrong?" I said, "Well, brother," and I can't think of his name now, "brother so-and-so has asked us to come over for dinner." I said, and he said he wants to talk to me about something. I said, and just now the Holy Ghost spoke to my spirit and said, he wants to ask you if you would be his assistant pastor because he wants to leave the church to you, which I couldn't do because I knew doctrinally we weren't in the same place, and that if I did that, I was young. I don't know. Maybe I should have done it. I don't know. But anyway, I didn't feel that it was the right thing to do at the time. And anyway, I said, but the Lord spoke to me and said, he wants you to do this. He said, but if you were to do it, he said, you would be pastoring within the year because he's going to die. And now I didn't know anything, nobody had shared anything with me about him being sick or having cancer or anything, So I only say that to say this. I had no idea how he was going to die. All I knew is the Lord showed me within a year, my friend, this wonderful man was going to die. And that if I were to accept the offer he had offered me, that I'd wind up being the pastor. And my heart was broken. So I drove to his house, and it played out exactly as the Lord had shown me. He told me he wanted me to come on as an assistant pastor because when he retired, that was the way he was looking at it, that he wanted to have somebody in place that the people knew and loved and that he felt confident in, to take over the church. And I told him, I said, brother, I fellowshipped with y'all and I love y'all. I said, but doctrinally, I come from a different place than you. And I'm not going to, I can fellowship with anybody. And when I preach for you, I preach with the intention of blessing and encouraging and inspiring. I am not going to get up there and preach something that creates controversy or that causes strife, because that is not wisdom. That's not how anybody should operate. I said, but unfortunately, my ability to fellowship with people outside of my immediate belief system is one thing, but my ability to minister at that level, I said I couldn't do it. I would have to preach what I know and know what I preach. And the people likely would clear out and go to, every other church. And so anyway, long story short, he was really brokenhearted at my decision. Well, I was busy. I had a lot going on. I was evangelizing. I had radio programs that I was doing. I was a member of the local United Pentecostal Church at that time. And one day his wife called me and she said, Brother Morrow, I wanted to call you personally and let you know. She said, brother, and I wish to heavens I could remember. I'm so terrible with names. And it's been, good Lord, that's been back in like 87 or so, 88. And she said, he passed away. He had a fatal car accident. So see, it wasn't even like it was illness or anything. He had a car accident. Who knew the man was going to have a car accident? And this was literally within about like 7 months or so of the Lord showing me these things, And I've gone in and prophesied to pastors things that God has shown me and told me for them that they needed to know for their church. And I've had pastors ignore me. I've had pastors laugh at me. I had one pastor who I loved dearly. He didn't laugh at me like I was being foolish, but he laughed like he just thought I was being a little hyperbolic or, whatever. He thought what I was telling him was born out of what I was seeing, that I was making a judgment based on something I had seen. And that was not the case at all. The Lord spoke to me, and I walked into his office and I said, Brother Allen, thus saith the Lord. I'll never forget it as long as I live. Said, you need to remove this woman from teaching Sunday school. You need to take her husband off the church board. These people are going to rise up against you. They are going to start a campaign to remove you as pastor, not only to remove you, but to replace you. And their doctrine is not accurate. It is not true. They are not teaching She was the Sunday school teacher, and I heard some of the garbage come out of her mouth in Sunday school, but that is not why I was saying this, you know. And I tried to warn him, and I said, if you don't do this, I said, you are going to lose half your church, and with it, half your finances, and you will go through a terrible time of struggle because they're going to go off and start a church and take half your people. But if you'll do what the Lord is telling you to do now, you can avoid that happening because you can catch it before they've established the influence they're trying to establish to be able to pull this off. Well, he laughed at me and he said, well, I know she's a little unusual. I know some of the stuff she says a little goofy, you know, but I said, brother, you're not hearing me. You're not hearing me. Thus saith the Lord. And I'm telling you, he didn't listen. Well, it was about 3 years later, I guess, now that I think about it, maybe think about 3 years later, 4 years later, right after I came out, as a matter of fact, he had sent me a letter. And he said, Brother Charles, he said, and I've got the letter somewhere. If I can ever find it, I'll show it to you because I've got it. But we've got so much junk around here. God help me to find it. He said, every word you said came to pass. He said, every word of it. Exactly the way you said it. He said they were in the church for these years. They established their influence. They, became real uh, uh, huggy with everybody and got people to really like them. And he said all of a sudden they started a campaign to have me removed as pastor, saying my time was up, that my usefulness was used up, and blah blah blah. And he said they started a campaign. He said, well, unfortunately, the campaign didn't work. He said, but they were able to influence about half the congregation, which they would have needed according to the bylaws. Excuse me, they would have needed, I think, 3/4 or something of the congregation, to vote for removal. And Brother Allen said, um, I don't feel God wants me to go anywhere. If I felt like the Lord wanted me to move on, I'd move on. He said, I don't feel led to move on. So anyway, he said, don't you know just exactly what you said? They took half our people, literally half our people, he said, and went off and started a charismatic church down the road. He said, our budget has literally been cut in half, and we are struggling like you cannot believe. They had built a new Sunday school wing with a gymnasium and stuff. And he said, and now we are struggling, and I mean struggling, to pay it. The reason that he even sent me that letter, when I first came out, I got a job. Once I went back to Connecticut, I got a job selling cars at a car dealership in Connecticut. And when I got my first check, first thought I had was to tithe. So I got a money order and I sent it to him, to his church. And I told him, I said, I didn't tell him I was out of church and I'd left God. And I don't know why I told you folks, I believe in giving. I don't preach for other people to do it, as long as I'm on the receiving end. I believe in giving. I believe in tithing. It's in my blood. So anyway, I told him, I said, I've moved back up north and I've got a job up here. I said, but I don't have a church to tithe to. So I said, so I'm going to send you my tithe. And that's when he wrote me back this letter. And he said, well, you have no idea how much we need it. Said, because every word you said came to pass. And if I hadn't sent him that tithe, he wouldn't have had my current address, and he wouldn't have known how to contact me and tell me that what I had told him had come to pass. Long story short, God uses the prophetic to perform surgery in his church. God uses the prophetic to challenge, to rebuke, to chastise. He uses it for for any number of reasons. And the Lord has uh, used me, and I have prophesied, and I've watched exactly what I said come to pass. And believe me, when it's been on the negative side, it's heartbreaking. I don't get any joy. I derive no pleasure from seeing what I saw, what I declared come to pass. But folks, I'm going to tell you something. I am so disgusted right now with so many Americans that it's not even funny. And I'm going to close with this thought. I actually went over time, so I'll go to the half hour. I don't like having to acknowledge that I look at people as idiots. And I'm wording what I'm saying very carefully. If you listen to what I'm saying, listen to exactly what I'm saying, okay? I do not like that I am so frustrated that I feel the need to say exactly what's in my heart. Growing up, coming up, prophesying, working in ministry, I've dealt with any number of people, folks, that I knew, if we want to be frank and honest, I knew they weren't half as smart as they thought they were. Okay. When you work with people, as long as I've been working with people, pastoring people, as long as I've been pastoring people, you deal with people all the time who talk a big talk. They act like they know something they don't know. And I would hear them say really stupid things related to politics, related to uh, government, and my whole life, I just let it roll like water off a duck's back. I just said, oh, well, bless their hearts. And I just kept my mouth shut. But this situation is absolutely horrific. It's surreal. It doesn't even feel like it's real. And it's a nightmare. And a lot of people are going to suffer. Many, many. I don't believe there's going to be one family in this country that is not somehow negatively impacted in a very grievous way by what is about to happen. May not, I don't want people to be afraid. I don't want you to run out and be scared. It may not be your immediate family. In other words, it may not be your children or, your husband, your wife, but it could be your dad, your mom, your brother, your sister, your cousin, whatever, aunt, uncle. And it could be one that you love to death and admire, and but because of the new Nazi agenda, which is what it is, folks. Don't kid yourself. I keep telling you, you need to do some reading up on how Hitler transformed Germany from a democracy. You need to do a web search and do a little bit of reading on it. That way you'll be able to know as things are happening. You're going to know in advance what's coming, okay? I'm trying to help with this podcast. I'm trying to help kind of prepare people and give them something to look for. You'll know what to look for. And when it starts happening, you're going to be able to say, aha, yep, this is what Pastor said was coming, and here it is. So it won't take you by surprise. But I'm to the point now, I don't care if you're a friend, a close friend, a longtime friend. I don't care if you're a family member. And I say I don't care. I mean, obviously I care, but I just I can't put on an act anymore, folks. I can't do it. It's just not in me. I cannot sit here and just say, oh, well, bless their heart. No. I look at people who support this guy. I listen to the stupid, asinine garbage that comes off their lips. I read the jackasinine garbage they put on their social media, and I'm terribly sorry, but I'm going to call a spade a spade. These people are idiots. They are utter and complete morons. Because if you cannot see through this guy, there's something desperately wrong with you. You are cognitively, I don't even know how to describe it. This is not a man. If this guy were a charmer, if this guy were able to really, really, be covert in his wickedness and in his vile, disgusting, hateful, lying, deceiving, cheating. I mean, my God, everything about this man is out in the open. And the fact that somebody can still support this guy with everything out there that's out there, I'm sorry. You're a better believer than I am if you're able to look at those people and say, oh, bless their hearts. No, it's not, oh, bless their hearts. There's something wrong with you. You need something. I don't know what you need. I doubt you could handle college, so I wouldn't recommend going to college. But you need to get an education. You need to learn some things, although now it's a waste of time. Now learning about our Constitution and learning about how our government was supposed to work, it's not even, you'd be wasting your time to do that. You should have done it years ago. You should have made the effort. You should have tried to educate yourself, because honestly, people that can't answer some of the simplest questions about our Constitution and our democracy and how our government is supposed to work, to my mind, shouldn't even be able to vote. Seriously. You ought to be able to pass at least a certain level of simple knowledge, political, constitutional knowledge, before you're even permitted to enter a voting booth. Because otherwise, we got a bunch of simple-minded people that don't know their head from a hole in the ground going into voting booths. We got people that vote for somebody simply because their dad says, well, that's who I'm voting for. That's who you should vote for. And that's all they've heard the whole political season, the whole campaign season. That's all they've heard. And that's who they vote for. And that's why we have lost our democracy. And I am sad to say I'm going to end this podcast today on that note. The American experiment is over. I guarantee you that. I guarantee you that. It's going to take some people longer to admit it. It's going to take some people longer to recognize it, but it's over. We have a dictator, and he has every intention of ruling by edict. And wait until the people that worshiped him and elevated him to power, wait until some of the edicts come down that he's going to pass down, because guess what? He doesn't need your vote anymore, dummy. He doesn't need your vote anymore. So he doesn't give a flying fig about kissing up to Christians or kissing up to the church or anything else like that. Nope. All that he's playing out now are his racism, his misogyny, his xenophobia. Everything you're seeing now are just all of his most evil, ungodly, unchristlike impulses. The man went so far as to go without putting his hand on a Bible at this last inauguration. What a message he was sending. What a message he was sending to Christians. He's like, folks, I'm done with y'all. I don't need y'all anymore. I'm not going to be doing things to cotton up to y'all. No. Just watch. And the minute leaders in the church tick him off, oh, I can't wait to see the grief that he's going to visit upon the church. It is coming, thus saith the Lord. Folks, I appreciate you joining me today again. I'm sorry this didn't go out live as it was supposed to have, but it is being recorded, and I'm going to share it as quickly as I can, okay? Please keep us in prayer. I've got a physical matter that I'm struggling with right now, which is also part of the reason it's very difficult for me to sit in this chair and do this podcast at the moment. I have a condition that is chronic. You know, it keeps flaring up every once again, and it makes it extremely difficult for me to sit up for long periods of time in a chair like this. And so keep me in prayer if you would. Pray for God to give you direction and follow the leadership of the Holy Ghost. Whatever the Spirit of the Lord tells you to do, folks, now is not the time to question or argue with God. Follow the leadership of the Holy Ghost. It may well save your life. I'm not kidding. All right? Till we see you again, I say this: God bless you. In Jesus' name is my sincere prayer.
Welcome to A Voice of Reason in Turbulent Times with Pastor Charles Burnett Morrow.
A Voice of Reason in Turbulent Times with Pastor Charles Burnett Morrow. Speaking truth at a time when truth is in short supply.